Welcome to our Going Green podcast. Today we're going to look at, can we actually trash our throwaway society? Basically, can we actually last with using all these sort of throwaway things? We've had these laws in about the right to mend.
You mean right to repair?
And yeah, the right to repair more than right to mend, I suppose, is better. But I don't know. Bend is actually quite true as well. It is sort of that, yeah. So, where did this all start? Well, the story that I know, it was in 1924. And in 1924, they were starting to look at making light bulbs. They were getting these lovely light bulbs, and they worked out the light bulb was going to last forever. And so what they decided to do was to form a little group. So all the world's leading light bulb manufacturers got together and they formed a cartel called Phoebus.
The answer is it was actually more a consortium. Basically, they got together as an industry and made some decisions on sort of what the plan was.
And they worked out what the average lifespan of an incandescent light bulb was going to be. And they decided that about 1,000 hours was right. So this thing was going to last 1,000 hours. And after 1,000 sort of hours, it broke. And then you had to go and buy a new one. Because if they were going to last forever, all the companies would make these light bulbs. Everyone would then have a light bulb. They'd last forever and the companies would go bust. So a few years ago, out came the LED. And I know the LED lasts for typically about 25,000 hours. That means that the average person will buy a new LED light bulb once every 42 years. Yeah. Now, I've been looking at the replacement of my LEDs, and we've got all LEDs in the house. We save a lot of electricity. They're quite expensive to buy. They're much more expensive to buy than the old incandescent light bulbs. And these companies are still making a fortune because they're selling these sort of light bulbs, which are, I don't know, £5 each. And they last about 1,000 or a few more hours than that, probably a bit more. And then they break, and then I have to replace them. Some of my light bulbs don't cost that sort of price. They cost a lot more because I'm using a lot more power. And yeah, that reminds me of the story of the CD. A double speed CD player would cost twice as much as a single speed, except they just made the motor go slightly faster. It was the same machine. It's like car manufacturers. One car manufacturer makes two different cars. They make a cheap one and an expensive one. Which costs the most to make? And the answer is they probably cost about the same. But because you want the prestigious top of the range one, you're willing to pay to keep the owner of the factory driving a Rolls Royce and sort of living a lap of luxury.
Yeah, well, the answer is it's not truly what you described it as. It's not as black as white as you think. The answer is,
I agree.
The reasons they have all these modules and these things is so they can sell to different customers.
Yes.
But the stuff's still the same. Everybody needs a car. So you've got the minimum, which is fine, but it also saves on their costs, which makes everything cheap. So
but if you buy a Ferrari, it has the same indicator as a Fiat. But the Fiat one doesn't cost very much, but the Ferrari one does.
No, but this is where you're paying for the name, which is a different story in itself.
Yes. Anyway, back to light bulbs. So the throwaway society, we've now got these LED light bulbs, and if I want to chuck them, they've got all sorts of bits and pieces in them, so they need recycling intelligently. And I suppose that's going to keep some other people in business. Maybe later we will have to pay for our recycling. And sometimes we might pay for our recycling by putting the cost of those things into the cost of actually buying something.
Oh, don't be silly. That won't happen. No, but it is this idea that sort of, yes, there's got this product lifespan, where, things need to be taken consider, the recyclability of a product, those sorts of things. But when it's at a cost, let's say a light bulb is £5 or $5, or whatever currency you want to use, right? And throwing away is relatively cheap, right? And recycling and all that stuff, right? Is it easier or more convenient just to buy new than to get this light bulb, which to replace it, or more precisely, to fix just the single, let's say, light tube? If you've got 4 light tubes, if just one of them's gone, to fix that one light tube, it's more expensive because obviously someone's going to go in and be careful and fix it, as opposed to just buying a new one, which of course works. So it's more, you've got the price of, or the cost of convenience against the cost of recycling.
When I started work, I started as a teacher. I went into industry as a teacher, and I worked with a wonderful network of computers, and these were before the advent of the PC. So this was a BBC Econet network. It was a wonderful thing. And when the BBC computer went wrong, and it did occasionally, in came the nice little engineer, and he used a very modern technique of detecting what the problem was. He wet his finger and he went round and touched all the chips till one burnt his finger. And that was usually an idea which one had gone wrong. And he desoldered it. He soldered a new one in, and off we went. And he kept this network going for ages, and it was reliable, and the cost of maintenance wasn't too much. Then came the PC, and what happened when our PC went wrong is we took the board out, we threw it away, and we got a new board. And we noticed how much the price went up. It was much more expensive to buy a new board than it was to have a little man come round and change the chip.
Now, I'd say against all that is the fact that sort of, how big was this BBC chip he had to desolder to replace?
Yeah, quite big. Now, it was probably in centimeters. These were sort of 1 or 2 centimeters in size.
Right.
And nowadays, I know if you look at some of these chips, they've really got sort of really micro soldering. And
yeah, unfortunately, it's the ability to actually see and be the precision to see and solder them and desolder. But you could, in theory, plonk it on if you wanted to. However, the major cost is, of course, what was that chip? Was it a very clever chip, or was it a very dumb chip?
Generally, they were fairly dumb chips, I have to be honest with you, yes.
And the answer to the point now is that we aren't using dumb chips anymore. They usually got known as what has been got
smart chips, yes.
Stored memory. So, of course, when it goes, you need someone to put the memory on, or the information in it first before you solder it. And things have got more advanced, more intelligent, which means that not anybody can just come along. You need specialized stuff, and that costs. Whereas the manufacturer, they can just recycle all the things, by basically removing everything and just,
and they got the convenience of scale.
And they got the convenience scale where it's just easier, which is the point I'm sort of making, to just give you the new board, and then they'll just deal with the recycling of the waste, even
or not.
Well,
yeah, or not seems to be quite a lot there. So okay, so we've got that. So that's the idea of computers. But I want perhaps a new keyboard. I fancy a new keyboard, a musical keyboard, and it's made by a nice Japanese company, and it's all right, but it gets a bit cheaper when it's sort of been out for a few months, and they're not allowed to put the price up.
Now, you told me this,
Yeah, and you've had a look at it.
and I've had a look, and you're absolutely wrong.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't exist. This idea that you have to create a new product to change the price doesn't actually exist.
But what they do is, if they want to sort of do something, they bring out a new model. And most companies are really good at doing this. They bring out a new model of this with this extra one little feature that you must have. And therefore you get rid of your old product and you buy the new one. Let's take a certain company, and I'll choose Apple for this.
No, you've got to choose Pear.
All right, okay. And if I choose this phone, virtually every year a new iPhone comes out.
And the answer to that point is, what's changed between, say, the old one, the 1 year previous year, and the new year? And the answer is not a lot.
Well, some technology does change. They do improve. I might have 4 cameras, whereas had 3. And I might have round edges rather than square edges, because round edges are so terribly last year.
Well, yes, you've got sort of the idea of fashion inside all these things, but that's a different idea of sort. But it's the marketing ploy of, you must have this, the latest and greatest feature. You must have, sort of X, because X is greater than Y, and it's basically the idea that, you're also, let's say they release a new model and the 3 numbers, you've got 1, 2, and 3, 3 being the highest quality, the best one. It's got all the luxury premium devices, whereas 1 is sort of your box standard, that's for everybody. But number 3, that's designed for the premium customer.
Yeah, except of course that doesn't cost any more to manufacture than the other one. It's just you're making more money for the company, aren't you? Because you've got to have top of the range.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't wind your window down on your car. You've got to have a little button that you can press. And I've had wind up windows on one of my cars for, well, quite a few years now. And the one with the electric motor's jammed, and it doesn't work very well on your side, does it? And when I push it down, it goes down really quite well. And when we want to make it go up,
that's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you could go and get a new motor for that and fix it and do it up.
But a new wind up handle doesn't cost very much. And honestly, the effort of winding the window isn't really that taxing.
I don't know.
Whereas, yeah,
I've got very weak biceps, or triceps. I don't know. I don't have any of them,
So, you can sort of have this technology, but the more technology you've got, there is then the more that's going to go wrong, and then we just throw it away. So let's come on to this idea of the right to repair, as you say.
Yeah, so it all started where you could take something in to be repaired. This is the idea of, as you say, your BBC computer. You can take it into a repair shop and someone can repair it. That's great, and then it continues work. What happened was manufacturers placed security features in to be, and they did this to protect their, because they've created something, they want to protect the IP, they want to, do all sort of protection. So they put in these lovely, they basically create different screws, and they only have the screws in the factory, as opposed to releasing them so that consumers or even repair engineers can go in and have a look. You've got to be certified to be trained with this fancy screwdriver, And so basically, if something went wrong, you couldn't go to somewhere and get it repaired. It's like, could you repair a printer? The answer is probably not. It's all the mechanicals inside, but in theory, not much has gone wrong. Only a little thing. It hasn't exploded everywhere and all pits are. It's just one piece and that has to be diagnosed. Anyway, but instead of making it easy to use, it's all locked down and secured, so you can't repair it.
But something like my phone, I've now got I used to have one with a battery that I could take out and put back in again. Now I've got a battery that's sealed in. The battery only has a short, relatively lifespan, much less than the phone. My wife's got a Samsung S5, and we write an app, and we actually having to use that because it had such an ancient version of Android. It still works. It's fine. It does what she wants to do. She doesn't want a new one because it'll be different. And all we have to do is replace the battery. But if we want to replace the battery on my current phone, oh, I have to throw it away, don't I?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not the fact they made the battery to be thrown away. It's because they use things like a glue and epoxy, which is very different. No screws, no latches, no nothing. Because it's easier to just throw it away and you buy a new one than it is to deal with all this recycling and reusing, fitting, and making sure everything's correct and wrong. Yeah, it's just easier. They don't need to worry about it. So, you just buy a new. Problem is, you sort of, it's just the battery. Everything else works.
But I talked to my mother. I talked to my father-in-law. They're the only two of that generation now still left alive. And they had things, and they had them to last a lifetime. And they were used to keeping things and recycling things and using things. And I talk to kids nowadays who I teach, and their idea is, well, you just throw it away, don't you? Sort of, no problem, just buy a new one. And they don't consider the environmental aspects of throwing anything away and trashing it.
Yeah, it's hard to do this. Sort of is the make do amend sort of is Whereas we've not grown, we've grown in having all this. I wouldn't say luxury. That's the wrong way to have it. But it's like Tupperware. You can always have Tupperware. It's fair enough. But
there are other makes.
There are other makes. Yes, there are other makes. But the idea of sort of, oh, I can't find the lid anymore, therefore the whole product is useless, and therefore to get a new Tupperware lid is going to be a struggle to go find the right size and dimension, and every company's different, and it's just easier.
And they might not even sell it.
Yeah. And so it is the point of, it is now easier to actually buy new things and replace them, as opposed to going through the struggle of finding something that will fit. But
sometimes it even costs more to have something repaired than it does to buy new.
Yeah, but it's the point of getting to that stage of saying, this is where we are. We've got enough resources. We've got the technology to make all these things. Just think how easy everything's been made out of plastic. Now, admittedly, yes, plastic is this wonderful material where you can have it mold things and you can make things out of it, and it works because you can have things of different, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, because of course plastic you can't reform.
You can some.
Yeah, you can form a little bit, but what I'm saying is more sort of it's because we've got these better materials to make stuff from, and recycling is harder, but that's a different story. Do you want to really have a steel box, steel lunchbox, as opposed to just a cheap plastic bag? The size and scale of production has made lots of these things cheaper.
I think it's about education. Nowadays, we have to pay for a disposable plastic bag, and they're starting to make them expensive. So people are carrying around bags that don't do that. They carry their own bag, they reuse them lots of times, and they're educating people to now not throw away and have plastic bags. When I go shopping, I always make sure I've got in my coat pocket a bag. Now, sometimes we have found, when my son and I, Paul, have gone shopping, that the items that we've tried to buy do not fit in the bag. But it was amazing how we actually did manage to get everything in the bag.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where, we only had one and we needed to fit everything in. Convenience. But the other major point about this is how many plastic bottles are used. And it's the idea that sort of, yes, bottled water's a scam, but that's a different story. But it's the fact that sort of, there is a flood of bottled water coming in these plastic bottles, whereas you can buy longer use containers. I'm saying, yes, they're plastic, but they're a bit tougher plastic, which would be better. And then you get to refill. Surely they'd be better and removes the plastic bottle.
Well, they can be different types of plastic, which makes them actually safer. If you read my blog this week, we were talking about looking at putting plastic bottles into the dishwasher and cleaning them. Very good. Except now they had hundreds of more toxic chemicals in them. Some were toxic, some weren't. And these extra chemicals have come from the plastic and from the degrading of the plastic. So it's not good. So should we have this throwaway society? The answer is no. And there's a story I could tell you about. In this country, there's a chip shortage. All right. Throughout the world, there's a chip shortage.
Yes.
And I own a rather large Canon inkjet printer. It's A1. So it lives in Paul's bedroom because Paul left home. He went to university and then he came back. And he shares his bedroom with this little printer.
Yeah.
The size of a planet, a small planet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this little printer has a little cartridge that says, I collect the waste ink and it's now full. And I can't use the printer until I buy a new cartridge. This empty cartridge, which is, by the way, about £100. Now, I can't buy one anywhere. And I mean anywhere, like even in the world, I've tried. And I can't because there's a chip shortage and Canon say, well, they just can't get the chips to go in their little cartridge. So they've brought a little patch out that I can put on my printer. And now my cartridge doesn't say it's full. Now it says it can still be used.
Yeah, I think you've missed like 90% of the story.
Yeah, okay, go on then. Fill in the rest of the 90%.
Right, so Canon have the cartridges with waste ink. That's absolutely true. And what the thing is, what would happen to these printers? The cartridge would fill up, and when you just go and exchange it for a new one from Canon.
A new empty one.
A new empty one from Canon. This is basically a waste bin, effectively. That's fair enough. The problem is, if you looked at it carefully, you would find that it's actually not full. It's probably only a quarter. This is the idea that they've got a lifespan. They're trying to get you to buy a new printer and so forth.
Or buy a new cartridge.
Or buy a new cartridge. Yeah, they're trying to basically keep you in the ecosystem. Anyway, now, because of the chip shortage, they have on this cartridge, there's a little chip that basically counts how many print cycles you've gone through, how many times the things move across or how much waste has been dumped in. Anyway, so they couldn't manufacture this chip, or more precisely, they couldn't manufacture any new printers because this one chip that they can't get, so they can't make any new prints because it's missing a part. That it's not a critical part. So what they've said was, because there's this chip shortage, we don't really need it. We're going to cut it from our line of new printers, which then save costs. So then we can actually sell the printers that we've got bundled up in the warehouse that are just on the manufacturing chain, that are just waiting for this one chip that we can't get any hold of at all. So they then sell it. Now, back to us. We've got a printer. We need this new box, this new chip on this empty container, but of course they can't sell us that container because there is none, because they even can't get it for the new printers. So one of the major things is that they did all the stuff to make sure you couldn't get access to it, and you had to get an official Canon one and all these things. But now you can't get any, and that's now stopping businesses' printers working. So now they're thinking, I'm going to throw.
And you can't buy a new one.
Can't buy a new one, so we're going to have to throw away our printers and probably go for a different brand. Oh no, Canon's not getting that customer anymore because they've lost it because they had this security feature or this, only buy from Canon stuff from it. So they've had to basically work out ways to get around their own security features to keep customers' printers working because they don't need this chip because it's basically useless. And it's one of those things where they've protected their products to the point where people are now leaving, which is the story about this is the fact that sort of, yes, making things difficult is easy to make sure you keep business. But when it becomes against the consumer and the consumer notices, they stop buying your printer. So you've now got to change your business model to actually make things more friendlier to the customer, to actually say, we did a bad thing, we're not going to do it anymore. By the way, we also can't do this because there's a chip shortage, so we could be good and sort of alleviate some of the supply chain, all that stuff. And suddenly the company / Canon now looks like it's the hero that saved the day, as opposed to it was the villain who put it in and is now claiming to be the hero because they took it out. They took something out that they put in.
Yeah. So the right to repair, we've got that. There's American laws have got them. UK laws have got them. And it's trying to get around this idea of planned obsolescence so that we can keep them going. But basically, what products are sort of affected by this? So you can repair your dishwasher. I had a dishwasher recently and the man came to fix it and he says, oh, we don't do that part anymore. You'll have to buy a new one. Now, this dishwasher was only just over a year old. And I was really upset, especially when before they came, I told them the model number. So they could have just said, we can't repair this. No, I actually had to pay for a man to come out and tell me, oh, we don't have that one anymore. And so you'll have to buy a new one. Great. The right to repair now hopefully gets around that problem. Washing machines, washer dryers, refrigerators, all those things, televisions. Yeah, they're great. Electric motors, that sort of thing. But what things aren't covered by this right to repair?
Yeah.
Smartphones.
Yeah, the answer
laptops.
is yeah, all the not consumer electronics. That's the wrong way to put it. But basically, anything that's not smart as opposed to dumb, like
microwaves, cookers, tumble dryers.
Manufacturers have worked hard to make sure that their product doesn't go into the right to repair laws, and they've basically sacrificed things like dishwashers, those things, to be allowed to be repaired, versus to protect things like cookers and those sorts of things, which they can.
No, not cookers.
Well,
cookers aren't on the list.
Oh, what do you mean, to repair or not to repair?
You can't repair a cooker. Oh, that's why we've got a cooker which ticks all the time.
Yeah, that's
after the man fixed it.
Yeah, I know. Different story, but yeah, it's the answer is they've managed. They've sacrificed dishwashers to make sure they're able to not have cookers repairable.
Yeah, and phones and laptops.
Yes, the answer is the right to repair laws that are happening are struggling to go far enough because, of course, these companies, they don't want them to go that far because they have invested interest in making sure they don't go that far, because otherwise they'll have to keep stock of these products or have the manufacturing process to keep it when it does. And, that's cost money. We don't have,
So what do you think about the right to repair? Well, you can always write in the comments. We get some in the comments. So, tell us what you think. The right to repair, it's there. It only works for certain things. And can we actually manage to trash this throwaway society? It's slow. It's going to be hard work. Maybe we'll do it, but I think it's going to be a real uphill struggle, especially whilst consumerism rules the world. You've been listening to the Going Green podcast from Philip and Paul, looking at trashing the throwaway society. Next week, we'll be back with another podcast and on video, YouTube, if you want to have a listen and watch when we look at some other things about maybe even trying to re-educate people. That might be a good topic. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.